Good deal. Thank y'all for being here. Um, start off with a couple things. Spring game going back for a long time, back to Coach Nealon is one of the things that's been together this whole time is Children's Hospital. So want to recognize them and special to have them on the field earlier as we started the game. So wanted to acknowledge that. Appreciate the fans showed up, band cheerleaders. The weather, the sun's out now, but the weather was much better than anticipated. I wish we had weather from yesterday, but it is what it is. And but I appreciate the people that came and they were into it. And obviously Jaheim's a fan favorite already, and Jimmy, the band was pretty fired up that Jimmy was out there, so that was good. Starting, I thought defensively, we held some guys out, but I thought Lee Koba really showed. I thought he was physical in the run game early. Probably would have had 2 sacks if the quarterbacks were live. I thought he showed up. I thought Hammond Russell did a nice job in the run game, really pushing and getting some penetration there. Josh Favris, who's had a quiet, but he's really improved. I think I mentioned him one time, but thought he made a couple nice plays. And I thought we played the deep ball well, minus one time at corner, which was something that we've been working on. I thought offensively, Jeremiah Aaron made a couple nice plays, which is somebody we really need to take another step. So that was good to see. Cole Taylor probably had the play of the game, the one-handed catch going across the middle. You saw he made a couple catches during the scrimmage. Devin Carter had the explosive play there in the third quarter. That's kind of what he's been doing. And then we're talented at running back, and we're gonna have a spot for all those guys. CJ had some nice runs. I thought Tony saw it well today. Justin and Jalen both had some nice yardage after contact, and then Jaheim had the big run, and so he's explosive. We've seen that in practice. He got banged up a little bit toward the end, but he was healthy today and had the big one. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you all for questions.
Neal, do you get more out of the spring game? Obviously, it's a different format, but people in the stands, kids maybe perform differently. You get something out of this that you don't during the regular practice?
Yeah, so you all were asking about this other night on the radio, and here the way I look at it is so 14 practices are basically staff. It's for personnel evaluations, putting guys in situations, units and people in situations, see how they react, and know there's going to be some failure there, and then see how do we handle that adversity. Also to get repetitions and scheme. Today is about performing, and it's really we want it to be a fun experience. It's what we did to dress up. The guys could dress up, and we did some things with competitions because they enjoy that during the normal practice. And so today's about performing because there is a difference. There's a difference when people are in the stands, when TV's there. There's an extra element of pressure, and you got to be able to perform. And so we'll use this as a tool to see how some of those guys handled it.
Thoughts on the quarterbacks?
I need to go watch it. If you look statistically, Garrett's stats were better. One of those that he hit probably was going to be a sack. And both of them they're runners. And in this format, it's hard for them for their full tool set, I guess, to be shown. I thought Nico threw 2 really nice deep balls, and our receivers didn't play the ball very well. So without having a chance to watch it, it's hard to tell. But I thought that they protected Garrett a little better, which is unfortunate for Nico. But like I said, this is going to be the long game. Regardless of what happened today, or what happened through the first 15, this is going to be a deal that went winter, spring. It's going to go through the summer into fall camp before we figure it out.
Yeah, what'd you think of Montre Miller? A couple nice breakups.
He did, yeah, and that's who I was really alluding to when I was talking about the corners playing the deep ball well. He defended 2 go balls that I thought, and that's something that hurt us a year ago, and so that was definitely a positive. He also had a nice break on a slant and got his hand on a ball. Yeah, and he's a guy that we need to. Obviously, we brought him in to play, and so today was one of his better days. I was encouraged.
Award winners. Start with CJ. Why did you feel him deserving of
Yeah, he's a guy that I think with that award is there's a little bit of dues paid to it, right? And so there's certain guys that have earned scholarships, and there's a really, and you know this probably better than I do, Greg, is there's a long history of quality walk-ons here, and guys that have walked on, earned scholarships, been great players. You know, Rich Braham was here today. You know, just off the top of my head. But even in the 4 years we've been here, there's been some really good players that are walk-ons, and more importantly, they're the glue of your roster. You know, for a small state, you know, I think it's really important for us to have West Virginians, and there's only a certain amount of Power Five scholarship players in our state, and so it's important for us to have a quality walk-on program, and and I think that's something that's improving. And then with CJ's a guy. First of all, he is someone that's very, very respected on our football team. You know, we always talk about there's three ways you become a leader. Is number one, you're one of the best players. Number two, you're one of the best people, and number three, you're one of the hardest workers. And there's no doubt that CJ is one of the best people on our team, and he's also one of the hardest workers. And he was a factor for us last year on special teams. He played on 2 special teams, and he'll continue in that role. And he's one of our best scout team players. And so that all those reasons are why he was chosen by the staff as the Nicholas Award winner.
The reverse pass to Garrett for the touchdown, does that stay on the call sheet for Penn State?
Yeah, we wanted to show them. They'll practice that now, right? They'll get some practice reps on that. Yeah. So I told Chad and Sean, they kind of bounced back and forth calling the plays, and I just said, hey, make sure you have some fun. You know, guys like practicing trick plays, and so that's one they've been working on for a few days.
You mentioned play calling. You talked about evaluating it. You know how Chad did this spring. Any kind of conclusions you've reached?
Nah, we'll worry about that in the fall. You know, we did it the last 2 scrimmages. You know, I think I said this last Saturday too. Is so Jeff Coons and Shadon Brown, they both called the scrimmage last Saturday. They both called the scrimmage today. And then Sean Reagan and Chad Scott, they called the plays last Saturday and today.
It's been some time since we talked about basketball player in Bell and Jimmy Bell being a part of the team and having this trial period. What are your thoughts now on him?
So he worked out for 2 weeks fundamentally, and then he had today was his 6th practice, and you see improvement. And now there's some things too that today was really probably the 2nd time that nobody's been out there telling him exactly what to do, you know, and like he got beat for a sack today because he just didn't he didn't set off the ball. Like in pass protection, if he'll get depth in his set, he's going to be really hard to beat just because his arms are so long. Like to give you some perspective, and you all can look at this, like tackles usually NFL, talk about wingspan, they're usually in the 84, 85. That's good. You know, he's 87 plus. You know, he's really long. And so there's some fundamental things that, and just flow of the game that he's got to get into. He and I are going to spend some time early part of this week, and I'll talk to Coach Huggins, and I think we'll come to pretty quick, you know, kind of resolution on where it all stands.
Hey Neal, on the play calling thing, I just got this, but you said that Jeff and Shadon. Mm-hmm. Typically, that's been Jordan.
Yeah. So
I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the reason we did that, I really want us to grow coaches, you know, and most of when we get into spring and in fall camp to a lesser extent, but in spring, it's about playing your base. And the thing for a play caller where you need experience is situations. And so, like, we just, at the onset, like, I really wanted to put some time in developing coaches, you know, and putting them in some situations. And so that's what we did. You know, last Friday and Saturday, Shadon and Jeff both, I told them on Friday, hey, you're going to call the scrimmage because I want them to get some experience because I believe they're really close to being coordinators. And I have a lot of trust and a lot of faith in them. And then Dante worked as a special teams coordinator, so he worked for 2 days. And then I told him this Saturday just follow up because anytime, you know, especially when you're doing it early, there's some things you wish you had back or there's some learning experiences you wish you had. And so we talked about it on Monday, and I was like, hey, you'll get another chance on Saturday. So I look forward to sitting down with them and seeing not only Shadon and Jeff, but Chad and Sean as well, and because there were definitely some improvements, but that was just something from a head coaching perspective. We talked about getting our players better. We wanted to work on some staff development as well.
And then beginning the spring, I think one of your E's or your goals or whatever was just penalties and mistakes like that. You probably got about 75 snaps today. I don't
He had
remember a
one.
penalty. He had one.
Jimmy had one. Yep. Yeah, he had one. But it was big. We've really concentrated. If you think back, and I know you know this, we had some procedure penalties that really hurt us offensively last year, and so that was a point of emphasis. And then defensively, we've really worked fundamentals. And sometimes it showed today, and sometimes it didn't. But we've put a lot of work on fundamentals, because what happens a lot of times, your defensive penalties, whether it's defensive holding or DPIs, because you're out of position and you're playing with either bad pad leverage or bad hand leverage. And so we've really worked that, and it was clean. We had a Big 12 crew, and we had them versus Kansas State, and I probably wasn't real nice to them, so they probably wanted to throw some flags today, and so we must have been even more so clean.
This is obviously a different atmosphere here, but we talked with Coach Scott on whether or not he would call plays from the sidelines, or regardless of how many plays he calls, whether he'd be on the sidelines or up top like past OCs. He did voice at the time that he likes being on the field and all the energy, and the players get a lot from him. Any decisions on?
He'll be on the field. That's kind of who he is. Yeah, he's really. That's one of the items that I've really enjoyed with him being. Yeah, one of the things I've really enjoyed, and I think, and I made this comment to Amanda during the telecast today, is when someone earns a leadership, sometimes, being put in a position, and he earned that, but when you're put in that position, you either flourish or you really struggle, and he's been one of these guys that's really flourished. He's good in front of the room. He's got a positivity and an energy level that the guys appreciate. And so he's best served. His best service to the team on game day is for sure to be on the field, just because he's such the energy guy, and they feed off him. And he does a great job with the guys one-on-one when they have adversity, or when we have a little bit of a struggle too. He's able to get them in a better spot. So he'll stay on the field. Sean will stay up in the box.
You mentioned the beginning of spring about getting back to the basic fundamentals. Now that you've gone through spring ball, evaluate that a little bit.
Well, we're better. I don't think it's a finished product. I stood back today, and I didn't have a headset, because I didn't really want to know what the calls were on each side. I really was paying attention to the line of scrimmage, and I thought our pad leverage on both sides of the ball was better. I didn't watch the perimeter as much, but that's something that we've really worked on from a receiver and tight end standpoint, is doing a better job with our hands, making sure our hands are inside on the perimeter, and then DBs getting away from some of, like playing a little bit more zone coverage, and making sure our linebackers within limits are getting their hands on people, and then our corners are playing with their feet rather than with their hands. And so I didn't watch them as much today, but I can tell you through 14 practices we were better. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that big a factor. The clock is going to run on first downs, which we did today during the first half. I don't know if you'll notice, we played with those new rules. I think you'll see a few less plays, but I don't think it's a factor. Like, I'm not for, and I don't think anybody is running the clock on incomplete passes. I think that completely changes the game. And so, but I think the clock stuff's going to have minimal effect.
Two young guys that you've talked about throughout the spring, Ben Cutter and James Hurd. Beginning of spring until now, how much growth have you seen, and where do they have to go from here?
Well, I think it's a learning experience for those two guys. I think if you were to bring them in here day one of spring and say, "Are you ready to play?" and they're going to, "Oh yeah, I'm ready. I'm the guy." And then about 5 practices in, they're like, "Whoa, this is a lot here." Like these guys are, and both of them, and I won't talk about it here, but they both had some welcome to college football. James playing on the line of scrimmage, and he's going against Wyatt Milam and Doug Nestor, and there's quite a bit of size difference there. And we've got a fullback in Luke Hamilton that they got under Ben a couple times. But what they did is both those kids are really, really hungry. They're intelligent football players, and they really worked at it. And those guys are going to be factors for us. Like Ben's going to play. I think he'll be a guy that's going to continue to grow. He's put on like 15 pounds since he's been here. and he'll be a factor for us on special teams. I think you'll see him playing more defense as the year goes. And then James is the most natural pass rusher that we've recruited. And so we've got to find a way to use that skill set.
From now until beginning of fall camp, what do your guys have to do to get better?
Yeah, well, we've got to hold our roster. I think that's where you start, and then we're going to add some pieces. In some areas that y'all have asked questions about. I think I've been pretty open about where we're going to add some pieces, and then the guys are going to get some downtime, which is important. We've got 1 week of class left, and then the month of May is really the longest break that football student athletes get. So they're going to get about 3 weeks. They got to manage that time. I think it's good because to be out of structure a little bit, and they need some time to be 18 to 23-year-olds, and I think you can overdo it real easy, so they need to refresh, and which they'll have an opportunity to do, and then we'll come back for the summer, and we got to get a lot of work done. Not only just from a strength and conditioning standpoint, but from a football standpoint too, in all three phases. And so we're not easing into this thing, right? So, we've got two of our first three are teams that are rivalries, and then in week 4 we play a team that's kind of been a thorn in our side. So we've got to be ready to go from the get-go. We're not easing into it.
Sean didn't play.
Sean, that was precaution, really out of precaution. Zach, we held out. Zach is ready to play. If it was a game, he could be ready to play. Mallinger missed spring. Polk's got a little bit of a muscle deal, so we held him. Trotter, you all know about, talked about that. Who else, Greg? Anybody else? Who's this? Redwood? It'll be close. It'll be close. Not at the beginning. I don't want to put any pressure on him to be ready. I don't think he'll be ready by the beginning. Zakia, I think the next month they'll kind of tell, but I'm hopeful for him. I think if he progresses over the next month, I think he's got a chance.
What's Cortez done?
C.J. Donaldson?
Yeah, he was limited before.
Yeah, so he practiced the whole spring. He got hit pretty low today too and bounced up, so I think that was good. A little bit of a confidence deal for him, but he practiced full go the whole time. Mike?
Just Cortez, it's a name you talked about early on, had to have a good spring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, today was probably the first time we saw a bunch of his stuff, but that sounds like he followed through on what was before that.
So I thought it was today for him was a little bit good and bad. He had the touchdown where he caught the glance route and ran away from the defender, which shows that's something he's worked on. He's gotten faster, considerably faster since he got here. But then he faded away from a go ball. I couldn't remember if it was Garrett or Nico threw the go to him down on the home sideline. It would have been about a 45, 50-yard play, and he kind of let Montre get into him and move him off his line there late. But I'm pleased with his progress. I think that both, he and, Devin has been our leading guy this spring in each of the practices. And Cortez is a guy that's really growing and has potential to be a starter for sure.
Okay, thanks, Coach.
All right. Thank you all.